Crime, Wine, and Chaos contains adult language and graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
We're all mad here, Chaos Kids. I'm Amber.
And I'm Naomi. And this is Crime, Wine, and Chaos.
Oh,
We haven't danced it out in a minute. Let's do a little.
Oh my God.
What was that? That was like at the end of the the dancing scene at the Breakfast Club when they're like falling to the floor.
Yeah, I'm the basket case today. Mm-hmm. My God.
That's fine. That's fine. You can be the basket case today.
Thank you, because I am. How are you?
I know. I mean, I got my hair cut, which always feels good. I always feel like, fresh faced when my hairs are all cut,
So fresh and so clean.
Yes, exactly. And, that's about all there is. I mean, it's been kind of a rough couple of weeks. Work is tough. And I'm in that place where I'm like, I look forward to recording because I get to just be focused on you and me and the Chaos Kids and kind of really just dive in on some tales. And yeah, this is my happy place.
Samesies. I always look forward to recording. Samesies.
What's going on with you? You were telling me before we started you haven't been sleeping again.
Oh,
the
no.
Insomnia is bad.
It's in full swing. Insomnia is #trending for me. Yeah, I have no idea why. I don't know.
There's no way to know.
There's no way to know. Getting older is the pits. Your body just starts to turn on you. And I don't know. But, I always think that when I'm tired beyond what's normal, that I'm going to sleep really good for that night. So that's what I'm hoping for. That tonight I'm going to crush it.
I am crossing you're going to crush it. You're going to crush that sleep. I am crossing my fingers and my toes for you.
Thank you.
I'll wish upon a star.
Thank you.
I hope that that's true. Are you drinking?
I am. I am drinking Leonard Road Shariz from Australia.
Oh.
Ooh. From the Down Under. We twin spazzled. Yeah. Oh, sis.
Sister.
Do you have a crime?
You know what? I do. And oh man. Okay. This is a doozy. And it's also a long mamma jamma. You know what I did, sister? I read a whole book again. I read a whole ass book to pull together the story. So here's the deal. I'm just going to say this right up front. This is long and it's still like the TLDR because I read a whole book and I narrowed like a 400-page book down into 18 pages of large font type. So I'm going to give it to you and then I'm going to tell you about the book and where you can go and find it and recommend everybody read it and learn more about Abby Drover. I'm going to tell you about Abby Drover. Do you know this story?
No.
Well, what's really funny about this is, everywhere I go, when I meet people or I'm getting to know people and they don't know that we have a podcast, I make sure to tell them.
Of course.
And you never know when you're going to run into a true crime fan. And I was out a couple weeks ago for a business dinner with some partners of ours from the studio who were in town visiting. And we were having this lovely meal and somehow the podcast came up. And so I started talking about the podcast and it turns out that one of the guys is a huge true crime fan and was prepared to be on an airplane for 11 hours the next day and promptly went and subscribed to the podcast, started downloading a bunch of episodes.
Sweet.
And the other guy, shout out to Devin, who probably isn't listening because I don't know if he's into this or not. And I don't think he's subscribed or anything. But anyway, Devin is from Vancouver, BC. And he was like, well, we started talking about, what about this and what about that? And he goes, well, you got to know about Abby Drover, right? And I was like, no, I don't know about Abby Drover. He's like, what? This one was huge. And I was like, I've never heard of this. And so anyway, I saved it and then I went and got the book and I read the book and this is the story I'm going to tell you. Yeah. So let's get into it. It was March 10th, 1976. Which might be one of the reasons why we've never heard of it. On side note, I mean, I did see, a few true crime podcasts and YouTube channels that have definitely covered the story, but None of the podcasts I listen to.
Okay.
Abby Rebecca Drover was 12 years old, a couple months away from turning 13, and she was in the 7th grade. She and her mom, Ruth, and her 2 older sisters, Kathleen, 17, and Robin, 15, were living on a quiet, dead-end street in Port Moody, British Columbia, which is just outside Vancouver proper, just east of the city. Ruth and the girls had moved into their home a little over 4 months earlier in November of 1975. This place was a really big deal for Ruth and the girls. She and the girls' dad, Cecil, they had split right before Abby was born. They got a divorce. Cecil had been pretty lousy, really struggled to keep a full-time job and support his family. Ruth and Cecil had met at church, and they knew each other for about a year when they got married. Ruth was 20. Cecil was 24. Ruth had been working as a teller at a bank leading up to their wedding, and Kathleen was born very soon after they got married. So I think Ruth, stayed at home to take care of her new baby girl, and she relied on Cecil to bring in income, which she was just not good at.
Not doing great. Yeah. Okay.
Not doing great. So their marriage was suffering and they split. And after Cecil left, Ruth was basically on the verge of being evicted, and she moved back in with her mom. Her father had passed away the same year that Cecil and she were married, quite suddenly and very unexpectedly. And he was only 48.
Oh, God.
And so when she left Cecil, Kathleen and Robin were already born, and she was very pregnant with Abby. So Cecil basically became a non-entity after he met Abby at the hospital. And it seems he didn't really pay child support or come around pretty much ever again. And he moved away and started like a whole new family.
What a jerk. Okay.
For the next 12, almost 13 years, it was just Ruth and her girls making their way. And she hoed a hard row as a single mom to these 3 kids trying to make ends meet. For a long time, she didn't even have a car, and she and the girls walked everywhere.
Wow.
They lived in some very low places that the girls were often embarrassed to bring their friends to, because then their friends would know how poor they were. Ruth worked her ass off and stretched her paychecks and moved, from job to job, trying to get better wages and the whole thing, right? And she had a side hustle, making cakes. So when she bought this house in Port Moody that had enough bedrooms that Kathleen and Robin and Abby each had their own room, like they had made it. The house was only like a year and a half old, right?
Wow.
So like life was good. And in addition to that, there were other kids in the neighborhood close in age to her girls, and all 3 of Ruth's daughters made friends as soon as they settled into their new place that winter leading into the spring of 1976.
That's awesome.
Abby was a cheerful girl, a really cute kid. She was a bit skinny and a tad tall for her age. She had auburn hair and green eyes. And just like her sisters, she was raised to be polite and respectful of her elders. Abby had some tomboy tendencies that she was on the verge of growing out of as she got closer to becoming a teenager soon. She was always a really healthy kid. And even when she was sick, she didn't complain. She'd just say she was tired and wanted to go lay down, even when Ruth discovered she was covered in chicken pox.
Oh. Yeah.
And no matter how sick she got, she always bounced right back. And this is my favorite. She regularly used the word bitchin' when she thought something was really fucking cool.
Oh my God. I love her.
Right?
I love her.
The only real complaint from Abby as of late, at this point, was that her mom wouldn't let her wear jeans to school like the other kids, which is the oldest mother-daughter argument of all time, right?
Sure.
The fight over what clothes are and are not appropriate for a young girl to wear. I mean, I didn't really write this down, but Ruth was, in her family, she also was one of 4 or 5 girls, and then she had 3 daughters, right? And Ruth and her family were Seventh-day Adventist. And so she had a very strong faith, and she raised Kathleen and Robin and Abby also in that faith. So I think that played a part in what she thought like Abby should be wearing, like her girl should be wearing. So I think they wore like a lot of dresses and like long skirts and things like that. And curlers. Abby really hated having to use curlers. And I'm remembering when mom used to put her hair in curlers when it was wet at night and make us go to sleep so that she could give us curls in the morning, and like how much I fucking hated sleeping on a head of curlers.
Yes, those pink foamy ones.
Yes, with like the hard plastic though. So you're like laying on your head and you've got like hard plastic curlers like pressed against your skull. It is not comfortable.
No, it's
right?
not.
Like, I get it, Abby. I didn't fucking like them either. So fuck the curlers. So March 10th, 1976 was a Wednesday. Ruth had gotten off work a little early, and so she swung by the grocery store on her way home. And then she pulled up to the elementary school, and the kids were just being let out for the day. So she made a quick scan for Abby. She was, ready to offer her a ride home, but she didn't see Abby, so she just headed back to the house without her. Kathleen and Robin had stayed in the same high school that they had attended prior to moving, and they were going to be switching their schools like after the next school year started in the fall. So they took a bus to school. But Abby was outside the school bus service area for her new elementary school. So she either walked, took a city bus, or occasionally got a ride from like one of the parents in the neighborhood of her new friends.
Okay. I mean, I know it's the 70s, but it's very odd to do like a cursory scan and not see your kid and be like, well, going home.
I mean, it's 1976, right?
Yeah.
And Abby had friends from the neighborhood that she very well could have already like gotten, into a group of kids to walk home with or
That's
something,
true.
right?
Yeah.
So I think Ruth's work schedule also meant she left too early in the mornings and typically came home too late in the evenings to be able to give Abby a ride herself. So also like Abby probably wasn't thinking to like look for her mom.
Right.
Totally. To be giving her a ride. Right. And it was a bit of a walk. It was almost a mile and a half between the house and the school. So like I said, Ruth didn't really think anything of it. Abby was probably walking with friends and she would be home soon enough. Except now it was 4:15. Ruth was about to start working on making dinner and Abby still wasn't home, and she should have been home at least half an hour ago.
Okay.
So Robin offered to head out into the neighborhood to look for Abby. She was probably just playing around somewhere nearby with one of the other neighbor kids and lost track of time. Ruth agreed and was grateful for Robin and Kathleen for always helping her keep the household running and keep an eye on their little sister. But when Robin returned, she didn't have good news. She didn't find Abby in the neighborhood, and none of the other neighbors had seen her. And all the kids said none of them had seen Abby since they got home from school.
Uh-oh.
If any of the kids would have seen Abby, it would have been Brent Hay. He and his older sisters lived a few doors down, and the Drover girls had become fast friends with all three of the Hay children very soon after moving into their new house. Brent was the same age as Abby and also the youngest, and he had an afternoon paper route that took him all over the larger, greater neighborhood. Sometimes when Abby was late for school in the morning, he would lend her money for the bus, and sometimes his stepfather, Don, would pick both of them up after school and give them a ride home. And Brent said he hadn't even seen Abby at school at all that day.
Like she wasn't at school.
Ruth called the elementary school and she found out that Abby had not been to school that day.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Somewhere in the book, it was talking about how there were some elementary schools in like other areas that were like had instituted a policy of calling when the kids were absent. But this particular elementary school did not have that policy.
Okay.
It was the 70s, Amber. It was the 70s.
So many hours that she's now been missing. So many more than she thought.
Yes. So now it's 6:30 and Ruth calls the police. Of course, they asked all the questions that a parent finds infuriating when the parent knows something horrible has happened, insinuating that there's nothing to worry about. She's around here somewhere and this is going to blow over in no time. This was after the cop showed up to her house to take a statement. Ruth let the cop know that Abby never stays out late at night, has never gone missing before. She doesn't accept rides from strangers. She's not the type of kid to run away. And in fact, Abby had never given Ruth any real trouble at all. And she's 12.
Yeah.
Not long after the officer took Ruth's report and left, around 7 p.m., some of their neighbors, the Hays, Brent and, his sisters, came over to take Kathleen and Robin out looking for Abby. So Brent, his two older sisters, Jacqueline and Wendy, and their stepdad, Don, drove them around. The 4 teenage girls and Don went out to scour anywhere they could think to look, while Ruth stayed at home to answer the phone. And of course, be there in case Abby should come home. And Hilda stayed with Ruth for support. Hilda is Brent, Wendy, and Jacqueline's mom. So Dawn and Hilda are referred to as like common law married. Okay. They're not actually married, but they've been together for like 6 years. And like, you know, he's basically Brent, Wendy, and Jacqueline's stepdad. Mm-hmm. That evening's search would prove unsuccessful. They searched for any sign of Abby, like her school books or items of clothing. They found nothing. They went to the closest mall. They had Abby paged on the loudspeaker there. They scoured a local park, and they even went into the bushes and searched all the grounds of her school. Neither Abby nor any of her things turned up anywhere. Ruth was positive Abby had not run away. Abby was a good kid. And even though Ruth was on a tight budget, the girls weren't abused or neglected, and there wasn't a bunch of fighting going on in the house or anything like that. Abby had no reason to run away and nowhere to really run away to.
Right.
Of course, at first, the police didn't go into overdrive looking for Abby. They knew that most missing kids were found very quickly, often hiding in the house somewhere or at a friend's house, just having forgotten to call home to check in. And they had yet to rule out that Abby had actually run away. Mm-hmm. Right.
Of course.
Ruth's sister, Dell, one of the girls' aunties, and Dell's husband made the long drive from their home in Surrey to be with Ruth and the girls that night. They convinced Ruth that they should take Abby's disappearance public and make a plea to the community to keep an eye out for her and help find her. When Dell's husband called the police station, however, he was told that the department policy is to wait 24 hours before taking a missing person to the public.
Okay. Fuck.
Yeah. So he called the local news station himself and was able to run down there just before the 11:30 broadcast and that night and get Abby's picture and pertinent details announced on the late night local news.
Good.
Right. A Port Moody patrolman did look for Abby throughout that first night, but did not find her or any evidence of her. Even though Ruth had insisted to police that Abby's dad, Cecil, definitely didn't come and take her, and neither did Abby run away to him, police still looked into Cecil. Mm-hmm. They cleared him, of course. That next morning, Thursday the 11th, Kathleen and Robin went to the Hayes house before school, asking if the Hay kids might be allowed to come with them to search for Abby some more. And Dawn again piled all the kids in the car and drove to more places to search for Abby, and again, finding absolutely nothing. Friday the 12th, the Port Moody police recorded Abby's description and the details of her case in the computer data bank operated by CPIC, which is the Canadian Police Information Center. As it was now 48 hours since Abby went missing, the chief of police decided it was time to seek public assistance, and both of Vancouver's daily newspapers, The Sun and The Province, were given the details of Abby's case and her description.
Okay.
According to these news reports, police had really been looking for Abby. They had talked to all the kids at her school and even went to places in her old neighborhood where Ruth and the girls had lived prior to the move in November, on the off chance that maybe Abby really had just run off to an old friend's place, or that maybe she missed something there since she moved. But the police did express that they were very concerned about Abby's whereabouts. They told the paper that Abby was a quiet girl who never hitchhikes, and there's no problems in the family that they're aware of, that Abby isn't the type of girl to just disappear. She didn't have any money or a purse, and the only things missing of hers besides her school books and supplies were the clothes she was wearing when she left the morning of the 10th for school. God,
I know. I can't even imagine this poor mother.
Just not a trace.
Not,
you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Cecil drove out to Port Moody to be in town and, I don't know, show up for a minute. He stayed through the weekend to help out with a big search that was coordinated for that Saturday. The police had already been searching in some old horse barns, a remote Bible camp, and wilderness areas north of town, to no avail. Mm-hmm. The full-scale search started Saturday morning with almost 300 people showing up at Abby's elementary school as the starting point. There were people in all-wheel drive vehicles and on dirt bikes to search more difficult terrain. The company that Ruth worked for was a helicopter company, and they brought in 2 helicopters to aid in the search. And a boat in the nearby harbor would scour the waters of the Burrard Inlet. The inlet couldn't be dragged, though. It was too deep, too wide, and had too many obstacles. Mm-hmm. And the search ended that day with no trace of Abby.
Oh, my God.
Days and then weeks passed without any news or sign of Abby. From the outside, it looked like the police weren't really doing anything, but that really isn't the case. As tips and leads continued to come into the department, the officer assigned to the case followed up on literally every single one. He kind of just couldn't let it go.
Yeah. Well,
he was really disturbed by it. Like it was like he was kind of obsessive. There was a caller that reported a man that was said to be in a bar showing a picture of a 12-year-old girl that he claimed was his daughter, and his car had front end damage. But this guy seemed too young to actually have a 12-year-old kid of his own, which actually turned out to be So they were like, there's this weird guy in the bar. He looks like he's 25 and he's claiming this 12-year-old girl is his daughter. He's drunk. I don't fucking know. And his car has damage on the front end, like maybe a hit and run kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So they just thought it was suspicious and called it in. But the police tracked this guy down, and he was a lot older than this caller thought, and it was nothing.
Okay.
There was a call that she was seen at a youth shelter in downtown Vancouver. She wasn't seen there. She wasn't there. A pair of child's boots were found under one of the bridges that lead into the city, but they didn't belong to Abby. Calls came in from all over the country and even the United States of people claiming to have seen Abby, and all these tips led to dead ends.
Oh my God. It's like she just evaporated.
She just evaporated.
Oh my God. This is awful.
Port Moody City Council put up a $1,000 reward for information leading to finding Abby, and an eccentric millionaire in Vancouver proper put up $2,500 for information leading to Abby's whereabouts, and another $5,000 for any information that led to the arrest and conviction of anyone responsible for her disappearance.
All right. Thanks, concentric millionaire.
Yeah. Winter came and went. Spring came and went. Summer came and went. Ruth and Kathleen and Robin tried to keep it all together. Ruth went to work every day. Kathleen and Robin went to school. They leaned heavily on their friendship with their neighbors, the Hayes. Their house was always open to Kathleen and Robin, who would regularly come by to visit. They all felt so badly for Ruth, the Hayes, and the girls, and they wanted to help them any way they could. But how do you even support a family through something like that, except to just be there,
Be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh. And the Hayes had struggles of their own. Don had been through treatment before for his drinking, and he had a hard time staying on the wagon. And he would sometimes leave for days or a week at a time and go hole up in a hotel in the city and go on a bender because Hilda couldn't stand him when he was drunk. And it was hard for her because when he was sober, he was wonderful. They'd been together at this point for about 6 years, and he'd been a decent provider for Hilda and the kids, and mostly a good father figure for Jacqueline, Wendy, and Brent. Mm-hmm. And then on the evening of September 6th, Labor Day Monday, the day before the first day of the new school year, Hilda headed out to the shop where Don ran his woodworking business and spent the majority of his time. She was a bit worried about him. He'd seemed pretty depressed that weekend, and he'd been in there all day, failing to join the family for dinner that night. And now it was 9:30, and she was starting to think something was really wrong. Mm-hmm. But when she got to the shop, it was all locked up, and all her yelling and pounding on the door got her no response from Don. And now her growing concern turned into a real fear that he might be dead or dying in there. He had tried to kill himself before.
Oh, no.
And she was worried that he might have done so again.
Mm-hmm.
Hilda called the Port Moody police.
Okay. I'm suspicious of Don now. I don't like it.
2 officers arrived at the Hayes house at 10:17 p.m. After assessing the building, finding both doors for entry were locked. They started to work on busting it in. But once they got inside, they searched the whole shop, thoroughly looking in every cabinet in the place, and there was no sign of Don at all. Hilda insisted that he had to be in there because he'd gone in and never come out that day, and his truck was still in the driveway. But the cops were literally like, "Lady, he isn't in there."
Weird.
Like, we searched the whole space. Mm-hmm. We looked everywhere. And the cops just assumed, like, this guy went with a buddy down to the bar or something, right? Like, she just didn't realize he got, like, a ride or he walked or whatever.
Sure.
So it's 10:43 p.m. They start to drive away. Both the officers are assuming that Hilda was just mistaken. Don was obviously, off getting drunk somewhere. So their windows are down because it was still a warm night. Summer wasn't fully over. Windows down. They're rolling slowly away from the residence. Both officers heard a blood-curdling scream.
Oh, God.
And then a call on their radio telling them to return to the Hayes home immediately.
Oh, God.
They first encountered Hilda and Wendy at the end of the driveway, staring into the garage in horror. Once the officers approached the garage and entered, they understood why. What they found was unreal.
I'm
Don
scared.
Hay was crawling out of one of the lower cabinets that the officer had just finished searching not minutes before, face as white as a ghost.
What?
Hay and the officer stared at each other as he got to his feet, and then Hay climbed onto the workbench in an apparent attempt to reach something on top of the upper cabinets. Later, the police would discover a .22 caliber rifle and a box of ammunition up there. One of the officers ran at Hay and tackled him and got him in a headlock, and then both officers realized that his belt was undone and his pants and his underwear were around his ankles. After getting his clothes back on him, one of the officers advised him that he was being detained as a suicide risk and began marching him towards the front door of the shop. The other officer... What?
Sorry. I'm still like, he just crawled out of a cabinet?
Yep.
That is so fucking creepy. Okay. Sorry. Okay.
No, it gets worse.
Oh, God. Okay.
The other officer went looking into the cabinet that Hayes had crawled out of, and that is when he had an even bigger shock. The cabinet had a false floor that was propped open, and he could see a shaft leading below the shop. And a second head was emerging from the cabinet.
No.
A young girl. Yep. Gaunt and pale, was slowly clawing her way up a makeshift ladder, and it was Abby Drover.
This is a fucking horror movie.
I have chills, and I already knew it was going to happen.
This is like the Ring and the crawling out of the TV.
Kinda.
I don't like this. Okay, go on.
Abby was rushed to the hospital quietly in order to avoid her or the police department being bombarded by the press immediately. She was not in good shape. An officer went up the street to tell Ruth in person that Abby had been found, like 3 or 4 doors down from her fucking house.
With the man who'd been helping her this whole time.
That's right.
Oh my God.
After being checked out that night by doctors and deemed to be substantially underweight, but otherwise okay, Ruth was able to take Abby home, where Ruth promptly bathed Abby with the care one would use for a newborn.
Oh.
Abby had lost about 20% of her body weight in the 181 days she'd been captive.
Oh.
And she was very weak and very frail.
I'm surprised she's already home. I'm surprised she's not hospitalized for longer.
I know.
Oh my God.
She weighed 90 pounds when she went missing, and she was already a thin girl, and she weighed like 70 pounds when she was found.
Oh God.
The details of Abby's kidnapping were almost too horrific to be believed, if not for the fact that there was photographic evidence of where Hay had been keeping her, and Hay's reluctant but eventual confession to a semblance of the truth of it. He did tell a different story at first, one that the police knew was bullshit, but after being confronted with Abby's account of things, he basically said, quote, "If Abby says that's what happened, then it probably is what happened."
What the fuck?
Just side note, because I didn't really spell it out clearly in the rest of this, like, this guy was fucking drunk a lot. And a lot of that time he was drunk when he went down there. Okay. The morning Abby went missing, she was running late for school. After Ruth had left for work, Hay called the Drover house and told Abby he would give her a ride. Around 8:10 a.m., she went over to the Hayes house. And when she got there, he grabbed her, picked her up, and dragged her into the garage and kind of pushed her into the hole, made her go down the ladder that was hidden inside that cabinet under the workbench. When Hay had built the garage, he had dug out a hole in the ground that he told Hilda and the kids was for working on the car, like a mechanic's pit.
Okay.
He had also told them that the hole had collapsed in on itself and it was not usable. But he had lied. He had built a ladder that went down basically like a concrete lined shaft. And at the bottom was a door that went into this tiny ass fucking space, which was basically 7 feet by 8 feet with like a 6 foot high ceiling. It was like a fucking concrete cell.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
The door into this tomb was like this really thick wood, and the back was lined with 2-inch rubber foam, and then the whole thing covered in thick ass fucking carpet. So he made the whole space basically soundproof. No one would have ever heard Abby's screams.
Oh my God.
There was a shitty twin mattress on a metal bed frame, a sink, a cabinet, a rickety old chair, and that was about it. I think there was maybe a hot plate. And there were handcuffs found in there, and there were chains on the walls. Abby spent 6 months in this fucking hole that regularly had standing water in it because of poor drainage, with one small shitty vent for air circulation. The crappy fan that had been there when she was first abducted stopped working very shortly thereafter. The mattress was soaked. She never had a single fresh fruit or vegetable, subsisting on scant amounts of canned goods and stale bread as Don saw fit. He regularly left her down there for days or even a week or more at a time, totally alone with nothing but a sketchy ass radio to keep her company. The whole place was filled with trash and just fucking reeked.
I bet. Oh my God. Ugh.
He did nothing to make her stay comfortable or clean in any fucking way. And he sexually assaulted this 12-year-old countless fucking times. The news of a family man who had kidnapped and held captive his neighbor's daughter, then pretended to help find her, was more than a local story. It was more than a national story. This shit went worldwide, which is why Devin was like, haven't you ever heard of Abby Drover?
I've never heard of it either. Oh my God.
While in custody awaiting trial, Hay would be rushed to hospital on 2 separate occasions for attempting suicide. His defense would be that he was unfit to stand trial, hoping to land him in a state psychiatric facility rather than a prison, while the prosecution would be aiming for a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The proceedings around this question resulted in conflicting professional opinions on Hay's mental state, which led the judge to order a full inpatient psychiatric evaluation. That took 30 days. So ultimately, the prosecution would offer a plea bargain to Hay. The deal would mean that he would not stand trial for rape, gross indecency, and abducting a female with intent to have sexual intercourse. He would instead plead guilty to kidnapping and to having sexual intercourse with a child under 14. The court proceedings then became the prosecution making their case before the judge that Hay should spend life in prison for these crimes, while the defense would argue that he should be put into a facility that could treat him and give him the chance to re-enter society after he was healed.
Okay. Well, society doesn't want him, and I don't think you heal from that. I think he is a broken, broken fucking human. Good God.
Yeah. It was also during these proceedings that it would come to light all of Hay's previous convictions over his 43-year life all across Canada. In his 20s, back in Manitoba, where he was raised in 1958, Hay and his brother had been on trial for raping a 15-year-old girl. The jury acquitted them of the rape charge, finding them guilty instead of attempted rape and indecent assault, and they each received 2 years in prison.
Are you fucking kidding me?
This was before like these connected computerized systems where you could like fucking find this shit with just by putting a guy's name in a computer. You know what I mean? So he, made his way across the continent from like the east coast of Canada to the west coast of Canada. And along the way, he fucking was a piece of shit the whole fucking time. Right?
Yeah.
In 1967, he served another 6-month prison sentence for an unspecified assault in Saskatchewan. He also had weapons charges and more than one incident of holding a partner, and in the case of Hilda, her kids as well, hostage at gunpoint to keep them from leaving him.
Oh, he did that to Hilda and the kids at one point?
Oh. Some years prior to the Ruth and the girls moving in.
Right.
2 weeks after closing arguments on February 3rd, 1977, the judge ruled that Donald Hay was a danger to society and needed to spend his life behind bars. He did recommend he begin his sentence at the psychiatric facility, however. Unfortunately, Hay would be eligible for parole after 7 years. So much for a life sentence.
7 years?
And his lawyer sought an appeal to overturn the conviction completely.
Okay.
It would be another 3 months before the British Columbia Court of Appeal handed down a decision dismissing the appeal. Quote, "He should never be released from prison. I am not concerned about this man at all. I'm concerned about this girl and the protection of the public," said the Chief Justice. He didn't give a shit that a doctor thought Hay could be treated and that he deserved no sympathy.
Good.
Quote, I cannot imagine a more horrible crime. And it was not an isolated case. I do not care what a psychiatrist says now, all this time later. This man has engaged in deviant practices for 20 years.
Yes. Good for you, Justice.
I'm not going to go into too much detail about the ensuing years for Donald Hay. Suffice it to say that he did get some time for a bit where he was allowed to leave prison on the weekends.
What?
Yes,
just go hang out?
Furloughs. Yeah, he got fucking, supervised furloughs. This was back in the time. I mean, the 70s and the early 80s, man, were just filthy for this shit. You remember, we've covered so many cases like this.
Yeah, wild.
I know. And so he joined a church where he spent those weekends. And this married couple that were neighbors on that same street of the Hays and the Drovers, when he was raping a 12-year-old in a pit under his house, they befriended him and supported him, saying he was a changed man now.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, sure.
Anyway, he had many parole hearings and was denied parole every time. He just could not be honest or remorseful enough or really take responsibility for his actions. He always blamed the alcohol. He always downplayed that it wasn't that bad. Abby recovered just fine. It was just like he was
Abby recovered just fine.
Yes.
Fuck off. You don't know that.
This guy just could not be he could not feel remorse about this, like on a proper level. He could not express like proper remorse. He always had excuses, but the parole board always saw through his shit and they were not having it. In May of 2000, Donald Hay was back on trial, this time answering charges from 3 women who came forward claiming they had also been sexually assaulted by Hay when they were children in the 70s. These assaults having occurred in the years prior to Abby's kidnapping.
Oh.
Whereas Abby had been spared the trauma of appearing in court when she was 12, very deliberately on the part of the prosecution in order to protect her from further harm. Now, 24 years later, Abby took the stand willingly to corroborate the state's evidence against Hay.
Oh, wow. Good for her.
Yep. And this is also when we find out that his stepdaughters had also been sexually abused by Hay. As well as, this is so fucking creepy. He spied on them in the bathroom. He set up a hidden mirror angled through the heating duct, pointing down at another mirror in the ceiling of the basement that allowed him to see what was happening in the bathroom through like a makeshift periscope, basically.
No.
Yes.
This guy is
That's what I wrote. I literally wrote, this fucking guy.
Vile piece of shit. Wow.
But in the middle of this trial, it came to the attention of the court that Hay may have been granted some sort of immunity from further charges as a stipulation of his plea agreement back in 1977. And apparently,
what?
Yeah, and apparently this was impossible to verify because the prosecutor was dead now and the file had not been retained.
I'm sorry. What the fuck?
Yeah.
And also the victims on these cases weren't consulted before they made a plea arrangement that involved
this was the plea from Abby's case before the women came forward.
Okay. Yeah.
He was in prison. They came forward years later. And now they're going, wait a minute. We think there might be some immunity stipulation in his plea agreement from Abby's case. So anyway, the result was all the charges were eventually dropped and this trial did not happen.
Fuck off.
But he was never paroled. And 12 years after that canceled trial on June 3rd, 2012, Donald Hay died at the Regional Psychiatric Center in Saskatoon at the age of 79. He died of natural causes after a very lengthy illness.
Good.
Abby mostly recovered from her horrific ordeal. She continues to suffer from arthritis that she's had her whole life since then after lying for months on that wet fucking mattress.
Oh, gross. Poor thing.
She will be, of course, forever haunted by memories of being starved and sexually assaulted by that piece of fucking shit. But she made a life for herself. She became a mother and a wife. Ruth even made her wedding cake.
Oh.
Yeah. Abby's first husband passed from cancer in 2001, which was really devastating for her, but she did remarry, and she and her husband are running a family business that also employs her son.
Oh, that's very cool.
And that is the case. The sensational, horrific, incredible, like international news story case of Abby Drover.
Oh my God, sister. Okay, I have so many questions. Sorry, I keep hitting my mic.
It's okay. I read a whole book. I might have answers.
My first thought when you brought her home is like, she's still just 3 doors down from.
I know, right? Well, yeah, they ended up moving.
That's what I was going to ask.
Ended up starting over. She sold the place as soon as she could justify it, and they moved far away and started a new life, and she got a new career, and definitely they were not staying there.
No, God. And then,
oh, and I forgot to tell you the other crazy thing. So one of the things that they talked about in the book, which was insane, and they have pictures of it in this book, it's called Resurrection, The Kidnapping of Abby Drover. The guy who wrote it was actually one of the newspaper journalists who locally in Vancouver who covered her story. And he went to her like 20 years later and worked on this book. The edition I read has been updated since it was originally published, I think in the mid to late 90s. But there was this officer that just stayed on Abby's case and followed every lead like a fucking dog. He even eventually went after every lead that came in, even from fucking psychics. And he had a psychic from somewhere in Canada, I think, who sent him drawings of where Abby was. And I'm not even kidding you, Amber. He basically drew the cabinet and the workshop and the box and the lid and the whole fucking nine.
No,
yes, the fucking psychic did. It wasn't enough for them, obviously, to find where that was, but he fucking you can look in the book. It's crazy pants. It's crazy pants. But they also said that a lot of times cops will follow up leads from psychics and keep in touch with them because sometimes the perpetrator might call in pretending to be a psychic.
No way.
Well, they don't rule that out.
Oh, that's creepy and weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like any of that. I'm glad that Abby survived. Not usual at all for somebody to be for that long and still be alive.
Well, and here's the thing. When they found her, she had been down there. Don had left her alone for almost 3 weeks, and she had not had any food except for 2 candy bars that he brought her, 2 chocolate bars in a 3-week period. And she was it was kind of amazing that she was still alive. And it was widely speculated or inferred or assumed that no matter what Don said, he didn't know what the fuck to do with her. And he was probably hoping that if he left her down there without any food long enough, he'd come back and she'd just be dead. And he could just be done with her.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God. I cannot get this image out of my head of him fucking crawling out of some garage cave. What are we doing?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
basically, it would be like if you opened up your kitchen with the cabinets under the sink, and then all of a sudden somebody's crawling out from below where the garbage can is, right?
No.
That's literally what he did. He had put this false bottom in that cabinet and he flipped it up, and then there was this shitty homemade ladder that went down. Everything was all shitty homemade shit that he did.
Oh my God.
And it turns out that trial with those 3 women that came forward later, they all had been down in there. So Abby was not the first girl that he took down there. He just hadn't kidnapped them completely. He just taken them down there.
Okay.
To assault them.
Oh my God. I hate it.
Yeah. And his psychology is fucking bananas. Anyway, I recommend the book if you want to really get in on it. Cause it's there's a lot of detail that I left out. And it's worth a read. It's worth a read.
Thank you for that, I guess.
You're welcome, sister.
Okay.
You got a chaos for me?
I do. Fuck. I guess just
Is it spooky yuki for spooky season?
I find it to be spooky, yeah.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I'm excited.
All right. I'm going to tell you about Lars Mittank. Have you heard of Lars Mittank?
Okay. No.
Okay. All right. All
There's
right.
something about the name Lars, though.
Oh, well, he's quite
I don't know.
handsome.
He is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So Lars was born in 1986 in northern Germany. He was an only child. What? You're all, yep.
I'm
yep.
like, yep, Lars, northern Germany. This tracks.
Yep. He was popular, athletic, good looking, and smart. After graduating from college, he got a job at the local power plant fixing small machines as an electrical engineer.
Okay. Smarty pants.
Smarty pants. By all accounts, he was happy and enjoyed his job, and he had a good life. He loved soccer or football.
Mm-hmm.
And he was even in a football club.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. His dad had a stroke, and his mom was taking care of his dad full time. And Lars would travel the 100 miles every weekend to go from his home to his parents' home to take care of his dad so that his mom could sort of have a break or have some help.
Oh,
I know.
what a pumpkin.
Pumpkin, yeah. He was so dedicated to helping with his dad that his mom actually had to convince him to take a vacation with his friends to the week-long stay at Golden Sands in Bulgaria. So
sounds fun. Golden Sands sounds like we're on a beach. We're all inclusive.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because he was like, I can't do that. I need to stay and help you. And he's like in his early 20s. She's like, go live your life. You know, you can take some time, right?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I know. So this was set for the vacation for the end of June, beginning of July, 2014.
Okay.
And it was going to be Lars and his 5 friends.
Okay.
So this Golden Sands resort, it's a party scene. I totally get like MTV Spring Break vibes.
Yes.
Like that.
And also like those European beach party scenes are like next level.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I can hear it. I can smell it. I can see it. I'm like, I'm dancing right now. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
lots of skin, lots of drinks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All of that. Everyone's tan and thin and beautiful. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So this is an all-inclusive resort and super popular for young people. So on this trip are 2 of his very closest high school friends, Tim Schultz and Paul Roman. And then there's 2 other dudes. They're all 5 good friends, but Tim and Paul were like his besties, right?
Okay. Oh,
so
I think I actually know this story, but just like in passing, like not the details.
Okay.
It is spooky. Okay.
I know what's happening and I get spooked.
I know. Okay, keep going.
So they're going out for drinks, going to the beach, playing football. It was a good time, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing of note that seemed a little off, according to his friends, was that Lars didn't seem to have much of an appetite on the trip. But so it was an all-inclusive resort. So the other dudes are like literally like eating everything in sight, you know?
But they're also like drinking a lot, right? And like sometimes if you're like drinking a lot, like you just don't really, you're just not that hungry.
Totally. Lars was eating a lot of soup, salad, and fruit, but he also had been on kind of a health kick lately. So,
and also like the sun, sometimes like being out in the sun a lot will also kind of diminish my appetite. Like I don't get as hungry during, like I'm not as hungry during the summer as I am during the winter. There's, you know what I mean? There's like that whole hibernation thing going on in winter or something. I'm not really sure. I was like, let's pack on the pounds to make it through winter. Like,
plus he, had like all that going on with his dad. He could have been worried.
Yeah, like stressed a little bit, like really wanting to be enjoying the trip and his friends, but like in the back of his mind, feeling a little guilty that he wasn't, helping out his mom and taking care of his dad, and like,
right.
Yeah, I worried. I can see all of that.
So it's the second to the last day of their trip, and they went to watch a World Cup match at a bar called Rock Bar. It was Costa Rica versus the Netherlands. So the bar is full of other football fans. And afterwards, they went to McDonald's. Lars didn't want anything, but he waited while his friends ordered. And when they turned around, Lars wasn't there. And they didn't.
They were inside the McDonald's, like all together, and they ordered and then turned around and he wasn't in the McDonald's anymore.
Yeah, he just wandered off.
Okay.
And they didn't see him for the rest of the night, but his friends weren't concerned about it because it was like such a party scene that maybe he was just
maybe
like,
hooked up.
Yeah, bye. Yeah, right?
Yeah, she's a hottie. I gotta go. Yeah.
Yeah. So Lars shows up at their hotel later that night, and he said that he was beaten up by a group of Bulgarian guys.
Oh, no.
Uh-huh. And that one of the punches hit him in his ear.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. Lars said that he was sure that these were the same like kids. This is how they were describing them, like high school kids that they had seen earlier that night at the bar, and they were like rooting for the rival team. And some sources say that Lars and his friends sort of like exchanged some words with these kids at the bar.
Okay.
So
I mean, I can see that whole scene playing out. I can see that whole thing going down.
I'm sorry, but like sports ball, people really want to like.
Look, Amber, the World Cup is a big fucking deal to a lot of people on this planet. And then you add into the mix like group mentality and a whole bunch of alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just a recipe for aggressiveness.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's banana pants to me. So Lars also said that one of the guys who beat him up, he said one of them made a comment about how easy it was to pay someone to beat somebody up in Bulgaria. So he was saying that he wasn't beat up by those kids, but a reference was made by the guys beating him up that the kids basically sicked them on him.
Like they were paid?
Yeah.
Mercenaries to come beat him up. How do they even track him down? I guess this little party, like beach area was probably not very big.
Right.
Right.
Uh-huh. So this is what Lars
and
is
also
saying.
Like this group of gorgeous German men, and this Lars probably stood out like a sore thumb, right?
Yeah.
I mean, pretty obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. His friend said that he looked fine. He didn't have any bumps or bruises and he was acting fine. And his friends sort of thought that maybe he made this story up, but they weren't like really sure why he would do that. It just seemed very odd, right?
Yeah. And why would he make that up?
Right. I have no idea. Unless he went off and did something like weird that they don't, I don't know.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he goes to the doctor anyway, and apparently he gets told that he has a ruptured eardrum.
Bummer.
Ow, yeah. And they say that he needs surgery, and Lars is like, yeah, I'll have surgery back home in Germany, not here in Bulgaria.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Yeah. But he was given an antibiotic called cefuroxime, and he was given the strongest dosage. But it's just an antibiotic, right?
An antibiotic? Okay, that's a okay.
I guess to
I don't understand.
Ward off infection with the rupture.
From the rupture, I guess.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't know anything about ruptured eardrum.
I don't know. I do not either. I'm not a doctor. I mean, we're FBI profilers. We are not doctors.
But I like to play one on TV.
We're not like that guy Snodgrass who was friends with Edgar, who was like
moonlighting as a doctor.
Also, yes, like kind of knew some medical stuff.
Yeah. Oh my God. No. Oh my God. No, we are not. So, okay. So he's got this antibiotic, but like the only side effects is like an upset tummy. It's not going to like alter your reality. It's an antibiotic, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, unless you have like some weird, crazy allergic reaction, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
Which is possible.
It is. So anyway, Lars decides that he's going to, so the friends are supposed to get on a flight and go back to Germany like the next day. And Lars decides he's going to catch a later flight because he's concerned about the pressure on the plane with his ruptured eardrum.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And his friends offer to stay and change their flight, but Lars is like, go ahead and go. I'll be fine. I'll catch a later flight. So his friends left.
I mean, at this point, he's still on the European continent. I bet you he could get a train back to Germany.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I would have been looking into like ground travel, you know?
Yeah. Well, also too, like this was like an aside, but I don't think a doctor told him that. I think he believed that because I actually read that a ruptured eardrum will make the pressure on a flight actually more comfortable.
Oh, right, because there's no drum.
There's no drum expanding.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We're not doctors. We don't know.
No, we don't know. So his friends say that he seems fine, whatever, they catch their flight. And so because their hotel reservation was also up, and it was peak travel season, Lars had a really hard time finding another hotel to stay in.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up at a really sketchy place called the Hotel Color Varna.
Okay.
So apparently
it's basically a motel is what you're saying.
Yes.
It's a no-tell motel.
It's a no-tell motel. It's the only thing he could find. Apparently there's drug dealing and sex workers, but they had a room, so whatever. He checks in, and the person behind the counter, according to him, made a photocopy of his credit card, and that made him feel weird. So he calls his mom later that night and tells her, and it doesn't sit well with her either. So he asks her to turn off his credit card because he's feeling weird about it.
Yeah.
So he called his mom again later that night after he had left his hotel room, and he said that he was hiding on a hill and that he was afraid he was going to fall, and there were 4 men after him that were trying to kill him.
What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He also tells his mom, don't call him back because he doesn't want his phone to ring and give away his hiding spot.
Well, yeah.
Uh-huh.
No, I get that.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Well, I'm just this is giving me Brandon Lawson vibes.
Okay, it was your Brandon Lawson story that reminded me of this story.
Okay. And I have seen 2-liners about this story on listicles, but I've never done a deep dive on it. But yeah, I'm getting Brandon Lawson vibes, but with Brandon, we're pretty sure he was high on meth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would a head injury cause this kind of reaction?
Oh, you're so smart. We're going to get to theories at the end here because it gets weird. Okay. So he's on a hill hiding. Don't call me. Then he later sends his mom a text with the name of the antibiotics that he is on and asks her what it is.
Okay.
So it sounds like maybe he's feeling a bit off because of the medicine, and, maybe he's not really confident about what he actually took. I don't know. So his mom ends up booking a flight for him, and he gets back in touch with her the following morning. He tells her that he is on his way to the airport, and he asks her if she can transfer 500 euros like Western Union because he had cut off his credit card.
Right.
And so she was like, yeah, she was able to do that. She was able to wire the money over to him. And she said he was thinking clearly and functioning just fine. He even had to walk her through step by step how to do a Western Union transfer. And he was able to do that. And his mom told him to visit the airport clinic before he boarded the plane to make sure that he was good to go for flying.
Okay.
So according to the airport doctor, which who knows, maybe that's also a moonlight doctor. I'm not sure. Lars,
he's a doctor on the side for funsies. He dabbles in medicine.
He gets up and puts his pilot hat on and walks out with him let's go.
Hey, Mon, how many jobs you have today, Mon? I'm the airport doctor. I'm the pilot. And I'm also your flight attendant today.
Can I get you a ginger ale? Oh my God. So, according to the doctor, Lars came in, and at one point, he had his luggage it looked like it was just a carry-on. He put it down and he excused himself to use the restroom, and he never came back.
Wait, where did he leave his luggage?
He walked into the airport clinic with just a carry-on bag and in some sort of waiting room, and he set his bag down and said, "Can I use the restroom really quick?" And the doctor
He had seen the doctor already?
No, my vision of this place is there's not a receptionist. It's a little walk-in,
right,
doctor, check me out really quick kind of thing. So he walked in, put his bag down, said, "I need to use the restroom real quick." The doctor was like, cool. And he walked out and never came back. Never came back for his bag.
He didn't actually get checked out by the doctor.
No, he did not. So this is where it gets weird. This is the part that is for surezies, because there is obviously security footage at the airport. And it is later.
Am I going to get Noah Donahoe vibes on this one too?
Yeah, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the part that I think is creepy to watch. And this is on YouTube. You can watch it.
Sure.
He is seen sprinting through the airport, like running like he's being chased. He's not
What?
looking behind him like he's being chased, but he is like running for his life through the airport, out the exit doors. He slows down a little bit to walk through like the parking lot, then disappears behind like a sand pile and over a fence into a sunflower field and disappears, and he has never been seen again.
What? There's a sunflower field right next to the airport?
Well, it's like a chain link fence, and then there's like a field, and then right after the field is like a highway. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Nobody found his body. Nobody saw. He was never picked up on any other cameras anywhere.
Mm-mm.
What?
So the 500 euros his mom put into his account were never touched. His mom, Sandra, hires an investigator after not receiving help from the Bulgarian police. I guess like the only positive thing that happened, because over the years, like she has committed her life to finding her son. And,
well, yeah, I mean, of course, yes.
Mm-hmm. And because she has
her husband who had a stroke.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, this woman. Oh, this poor woman.
I know. And because she does this, like people, will call all the time thinking that they saw Lars like homeless or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he has yet to be found, but she has positively identified 15 other missing German men who weren't Lars.
Because of her search for Lars, she's found other missing men.
Mm-hmm. Some of them were reunited with families and some of them didn't want to be found. But yeah, so I guess that's positive. But yeah, some of the theories are that he maybe had a head injury from getting hit. I don't know. Maybe there were men following him when he called and said he was hiding on a hill.
What? The running out of the airport like he was on fire is just...
Yes. You've got to watch this YouTube. He is running for his life through the airport. He gets outside and kind of slows down for a second and kind of looks around and then runs. And he's like through the parking lot behind a sand pile over a fence and gone.
Like a dune or something?
Yeah. Or like they were about to, I don't know, rake it out and do something with it. I don't know. But
it's so weird.
It is so weird.
I mean, it's possible he was having some kind of weird allergic reaction to that antibiotic.
Right. But
at some point you'd think that the effects would wear off, especially if he left all his shit at the airport. He's not taking the antibiotic anymore. Mm-hmm. Like once it's out of your system, the allergic reaction should stop. Mm-hmm. And then he should come to his senses and like return to the airport or call his mom or something.
Yeah.
Where was his cell phone? Was his cell phone on him when he ran out of the airport?
No. So that was another thing. There were again, it sounds like this was bungled by the Bulgarian police. They thought he had his phone and wallet in his pocket. And I think it was later learned that it was in that bag that he left at the clinic.
Oh.
And
he didn't have his phone or his wallet either.
Mm-mm.
He had nothing.
Except
the clothes on his back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the weird behavior started at McDonald's when he wandered away.
Well, it sounds like the weird behavior started before McDonald's.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know if maybe something really strong was slipped into a drink at the bar that night by one of those dudes. I don't know. But then like...
But that would have worn off too.
Yeah,
that would have
came back the next morning sort of okay, and then was able to walk his mom through an online wire transfer, like totally fine.
Do you think maybe he was taking drugs and he was just hiding it from his friends?
Maybe. And then the other thing that I thought was like, he's an electrical engineer. He's incredibly intelligent. It took kind of just a cursory search for me to learn that like flying would have been fine with the ruptured eardrum. So it's like, were you trying to stay behind for some other reason? And so you made up this huge story. I don't know.
Like, why?
But also, like, it's documented that he had a ruptured eardrum and he was given a prescription.
It's just baffling.
I know.
And the disappearing without a trace. I mean, that part is just like, Bulgaria is not that big.
Mm-mm.
And he wouldn't have been able to go anywhere else by any like transport because he wouldn't have any papers to cross any borders.
I know.
If he left everything in his bag, he didn't have a passport. Any road he tried to take out of Bulgaria, he would hit a checkpoint into another country. He couldn't take a train without a passport. He couldn't take a flight without he couldn't pay for any of it.
No, nothing.
And even if he hitched a ride with somebody, they would hit a checkpoint at a border crossing that he would have to like have a passport to be allowed to go through.
The other thing too is like he's at the age where like
I was thinking this
a diagnosis of like schizophrenia would kick in, but I don't know that it's so like yesterday like here it goes, just boom. But I also didn't have a lot. I mean, his friends did say his behavior was a bit strange during the vacation, and there was I couldn't find anything from like coworkers or other people that were around him regularly that could say that he was starting to slowly seem different, you know?
It's hard to say though. Like we don't know a lot. At least by your account, we don't really know a lot about his like day-to-day life. How often he saw his friends. His mom saw him on weekends. You know, she was probably like taking advantage of him being there to like do other things or rest. So maybe she wasn't interacting with him very much. So it could have been slowly coming on. And it kind of went unnoticed.
Yeah.
And so he's, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Sister, spooky ookie.
Spooky. I hate it too.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay. Well, that was incredible. That we did that.
We did that.
We totally did that.
Do you have anything else for the good of the order or what?
I mean, you know, just all the things. Just all the things. Go find us on all the things. You can find me on Twitter at Misnomers. I'm sorry, X. Misnomers.
We're on the TikTok
quiet over there lately. Too. We're on the TikToks now. Amber's in a band. She's a fucking rock star. Tinfoil Top Hat. You can go check them out wherever you can find music.
Yeah.
And
join the Patreon if you want some bonus content.
Please get some bonus content. Join the club. Give us a good rating on your podcast app. Go to the Apple Podcast app and write us a review. You know, support. Just support.
Well, I love you, sister.
I love you too. And that was
fucking chaotic. Bye-bye. Bye. Wine and Chaos is produced by 8th Direction Records. Artwork by Joshua M. Davis. Music by Paul Abner. If you would like to support the show, you can visit our Patreon page at crimewineandchaos.com/Patreon. Cheers.
Football.
Football.
Football.